computer-programmed reality. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Yeah, here we go. How about that? We feeling better now? Sacre bleu. Yeah, okay, my apologies. Little setting issue, not a big deal. As I was saying, since it was caught by me very early in the broadcast here, I'm going to be working with a new streaming company called Dialogue. And it will not be for 15 minutes of flame, but I'm going to be doing roughly 10 to 15 minutes astrological broadcasts and podcasts every day. Just basically looking at where the planets are, go through each sign for that day, kind of a quick synopsis, like a shot of wheatgrass juice in the morning. 10 to 15 minutes. I'll probably wind up doing that before 15 minutes of flame. It's a different format. and it's just a straight kind of broadcast format. And I'll have a link that I'll be putting up on Facebook and Twitter. I'll be re-engaging with Twitter here shortly. And it's really an opportunity for me to partner with a different media partner. They actually approached me and wanted to sponsor me, which I thought was great. So they'd heard my shows over here on Spreaker. And again, it'll be a bit different. It'll be strictly astrology. But if you're into astrology and you kind of want to get an astrological weather report for about 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll have that to look forward to. And then I'll wind up rolling that into, well, after that, I'll transition and wind up doing 15 minutes of flame. So probably looking at like 8 o'clock in the morning for the dialogue, 15-minute report. And then at 9, I'll be doing 15 minutes of flame. How's that sound? 2 opportunities to listen, to some degree even interact. There's a comment section with the dialogue stuff. Real simple. It's just a way for me to continue to expand my media empire. And then, like I said, not this Monday, but the following Monday, it'll be full on 15 minutes of flame. It'll be interesting. I gotta protect my assets. Going to read you today a story. Let's use in the chat room. I think we got some chatters. There's Lynn. There we go. Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, I had a little bit of a mix up on the sound. I'll read you another disturbing story about freedom of the press. We're getting to the point of a lockdown. The electronic gulag, which is what I've been calling it, is becoming more increasingly clear with each passing day. This all began, of course, when Alex Jones was ushered unceremoniously out of the alt media platform and theater. Alex Jones was disappeared. This is the modern equivalent of walking around in Argentina during the times of Pinochet. He just get disappeared. If you were somebody who didn't agree with what was going on, if you thought that Pinochet was running a fascist government, you didn't like it, let's say you're not even a socialist. You don't like the heavy hand of fascism, and you were speaking out against it. You know, you're walking down the street, and all of a sudden, a car pulls up, and 2 guys get out, and one chloroforms you, and the other, puts your hands behind your back, and next thing you know, you're off in a van or a car, and I'll see you again. You're gone. Disappeared. Well, that's what happened to Alex Jones. He got disappeared. It all started with Jones, but it hasn't stopped with Jones. There's a lot happening right now, and it's not good. It's not good at all. So the next 2 websites that were disappeared were Saboteur 365 and Fellowship of the Minds. And there are 2 websites I actually go to. One of the things that unites both Saboteur 365 and Fellowship of the Minds is that they are white identitarian sites, meaning that they're going to stand up for white rights or being white or Caucasian in this body and in this lifetime. I don't have a problem with that. I think if everybody is going to take a stand and if everybody is going to want to put their interests forward for their fill in the blank, everybody should have an opportunity for it. Bottom line, end of story. Now, in my perfect world, we all get along. In my perfect world, everybody gets their needs met. Doesn't always mean we have to do it together. Sometimes we can, if we want to. Sometimes we don't have to. Sometimes people need their own place to be amongst their own people, There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with that. You know, like, I'll give you an example. The barber shop is a really, really important place in African American culture. It's a very specific kind of meeting place, right? They go there, they hang out, they talk shit, they get their hair cut. Great. Do I want to go there? Not necessarily. For a number of reasons. And it's not because I don't want to get my hair cut or hang out. That's their place. That is their place. Like, let them have it. You know, that is a cultural extension of that community. And they have that, right? Boom, end of story. There are other versions of this. And it's okay for people to have enclaves. So it's okay. We don't always have to hang out together. But it also doesn't mean that we should be on these gulags and archipelagos, really, of our own experience. Because I do believe the world is richer when we have each other. I believe that. Aretha Franklin died yesterday. And she was a great artist. Tremendous art. You know, tragic life. I think she really struggled to get the relationship part of her life right for a long time. But she was an amazing, amazing, amazing artist, right? And people were moved. You know, people listened to, her version of Bridge Over Troubled Waters and Respect and, all these fantastic songs that she made. And her life was, made ours richer. Died on the same day as Elvis. The Queen and the King of rock and roll, the Queen of soul, both died on the same day. How about that? For High Strange. Alchemical connection. I grew up in a pretty multicultural area of California. I had friends from all different backgrounds, different races, different religions, and I had great friendships with a lot of them. I was raised in an environment where it was not a big deal. One of my favorite things that I used to do was I used to go play basketball with my buddies. Back in the day we called them the brothers, right? The brothers. And they actually had an intramural basketball team. And that was the name of their basketball team, the Brothers. So I'd go play with the brothers, right? I'd go play ball with the brothers. We do like kid stuff, right? Teenage kid stuff. We get high and play basketball. That's what I did. I hung out with these guys. And it wasn't just a high school thing. I did it all my life. I've played tons of basketball. Logged thousands of hours of pickup basketball in gyms and playgrounds all up and down the West Coast. And 80% of the time, 75% of the time, I was hanging out with the brothers. I lived in Oakland. Okay, do the math. I love these guys. They were great. I ran into one asshole one time, total asshole. But you find them just about everywhere, right? I don't think one skin tone has a complete patent and copyright on assholism. But I loved it. Camaraderie, fun, playing. It was great. It's totally great. And you know what mattered? Is if you could play. That's the only thing that could matter. If you could play, they didn't give a shit. You had to prove yourself. If you got out there and played and proved yourself, you were welcome. You could hang out. It's real simple. Real simple. It's one of the things I loved about sports. You could either play or not play. The shot would go in or it wouldn't. You would hold up your end of the bargain or you didn't. This is the real kind of black and white beauty of sports. The testing ground, the proving ground. And so when I look at the world around me today, and I look at the kind of state of things, it really, I lament, I lament what's occurred over the course of the last 5 to 6 years. And it all started when Obama was president. And it all started with Trayvon Martin and what happened with Trayvon Martin down in Florida. And of course, Obama telling people if he had a son, he'd be like Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was a thug. He was a thug. I'm sorry. He was walking around and he was into stealing stuff. And George Zimmerman and his patrol, his neighborhood patrol, got into a tussle with the kid. The kid tried to take him. He was big. Trayvon Martin was like 6'2". He was a big kid. He wasn't that little fresh-faced polo shirt wearing fifth grader that they popularized with his image all over the place. No, he was a big kid. And George Zimmerman, who I'm not a fan of. George Zimmerman is not somebody who I would rush to defend. But he had to defend himself in that moment, and Trayvon Martin died. Right? And that's not even taking into account the whole high strange with his father, Tracy, his connection to Freemasonry and all that stuff. I mean, that's weird. The whole thing is weird. I've broken down the Trayvon Martin stuff from the meta level before, and he was in some ways a sacrifice, a symbolic sacrifice, because when you look at the word Martin, it's Martian, it's Martial, it's Aries, and it's war. And he was an Aquarius, so this was in some ways this meta sacrifice of the Aquarian sort of martial energy. And then Black Lives Matter eventually comes out of this. And we have Michael Brown and all the stuff that took place under Obama's watch. And prior to that, and I've told this story before, I had really strong connections with the Black astrological community on Facebook and some really good astrologers. I was doing shows with people like Ra Aku, the Cosmocrat, and Kair Love, and and they would have me on their shows. It was like how I grew up in San Jose, California. It was the same thing. We had this symbiosis. We didn't always agree. I didn't always agree with Ra. He didn't always agree with me, but it's okay. We had enough in common to connect. I mean, one time he just picked up the phone and called me, started talking to me. I'm like, this is pretty cool, man. Right? We're having a connection. We're having a relationship. This is cool. And I spent a lot of time connected with Kair, and there are a lot of I used to have Sister Myra on my shows. I mean, I thought it was a really enriching time. At least it was for me. I don't know. I can't speak for them. And then all of a sudden, all this racial bullshit comes up. And, it was not good. It was not good. They're like, how long are we going to take this stuff? We got to fight back. I mean, they were just getting triggered and played into this polarity trip. And I would try to tell them, I said, look, this is a program. This is what's going on. You're being played. You're being played. You're being manipulated. And nobody really wanted to hear me. And at that point, I had to kind of move away from that community because they were so angry. And, and look, I'm not going to sit here and stand in judgment of why people are angry. I can't get in their shoes. I don't know what it's like to be profiled or anything like that. I don't know what that's like. Although to some extent I kind of do now. Because now I'm a crazy conspiracy motherfucking wingnut, right? And this is what's happening in the press, and I'm going to talk about that. There's a new kind of profiling in town. But I don't know what it's like to be profiled in that way. So I can't sit here in judgment and say, get over your shit. I can't do that. Because I haven't been there. I don't know what it's like to feel something along those lines. Right? But I know that ultimately, we got to figure something out so that we can have a negotiable experience with one another on this planet. and being able to get in the present and into the now. Into the now is really important. Look, we've all got grievances. We've all got massive wounds, massive hurt, massive pain. I've been getting back into this retrograde stuff with Mercury in Leo and Mars in Aquarius retrograde. And I've been looking at my patrilineal line. And my patrilineal line, because we're dealing with Saturn retrograde, the father, Mercury retrograde, and Leo, the son, the father, Mars retrograde, Aquarius, action, male energy. So I've been doing this own kind of personal archaeology, and my patrilineal line is all messed up. Really not good. My father, he managed to keep it together and have a decent life, but boy, he went through so much pain. So much pain and so much suffering. Foster homes, in and out. Father died. That would be my grandfather. Alcoholic, a troubled guy. That's my father's father. Never met him. His father's father was kind of an itinerant, wanderer, hobo kind of dude. His father was a conductor on a train, or did something on a train. These guys are rootless. And I'm looking at this going, wow, this is what I came out of, right? I didn't come out of some sort of, blue blood marriage and lineage. No. And each one of those men had a significant amount of pain that's been translated and transferred onto the next generation. And I've had to deal with my own version of that. We all have, theoretically, our stories, our hurts, our pains, things that are like, barbed wire fences we get caught on in our lives. The key is to get into the now. And this is where it's happening. This is where the action is. It's in the now. And somehow we're going to have to get there. And I don't think you can legislate being in the now. I don't think you can legislate things like reparations, for instance. Doesn't work. Because the reparation is an anchor to the past. And I could say that for any, I've got Irish in me. I have a lot of Irish. The Irish were fucked over. The Irish were made slaves. What if I wanted reparations for being Irish? It wouldn't really serve me. It's already happened. It's in the past. It's in the past. The past is difficult to sort of let go of and shake, but it's important. The action is in the now. And everybody has a list of grievances and a list of demands, and there are parties on the left and the right, which, especially the left, which are always there and ready to exploit those grievances and the list of demands. And you vote for me, and I'll take care of you. You come over to our side, and we'll take care of you. We'll make sure all those bad feelings and those boo-boos and those warts get taken care of. But we'll always make sure that you have those wounds and boo-boos and warts to some degree, so we can always ultimately take care of you, because we always want to be able to take care of you. We don't really want you to take care of yourself. No, you need us. You need us. And we'll make sure that you need us. The action is in the now. That's where it's at. So now WordPress has taken down a handful. This is from TechCrunch.com. WordPress has taken down a handful of alt-right blogs. Jay Parker, Mr. Illuminati in the film industry, he got his blog taken down. He's Jay freaking Parker. He's not David Duke. He's not Jared Taylor. He's Jay Parker. Let me read this. WordPress has taken down a handful of alt-right blogs, according to several complaints from affected blog owners and readers who claim the sites were removed from WordPress.com. That's important to know. If you have a blog on WordPress.com, I would suggest you move it. Move it. Despite not being in violation of the company's terms of service, some site owners also said they were not notified of the shutdown in advance and have lost their work. That's a Mercury retrograde thing, right? The removals, we've learned, are in part due to a new policy WordPress has rolled out that now prohibits blogs from the malicious publication of unauthorized identifying images of minors. True Node and Leo, the exploitation of children and the emotional currency that goes right along with it. More manipulation. In relationship to the South Node and Aquarius, free speech, the internet, multimedia platforms. There you go. Yes, that's right. The company has created a new rule to specifically handle the Sandy Hook conspiracists and boot them from WordPress.com. Gee, I wonder why. While some of the affected sites had already been flagged for other violations, many were hosting Sandy Hook conspiracy theories and other false flag content. In a YouTube video, the host of one site lamented they have wiped out 11 years of my fucking life. He then read through WordPress's terms of service, confused as to how he was in violation. According to Google's cache, his site hosted 9/11 truther content and claimed that Sandy Hook was a staged event. I'm telling you right now, you are not going to be able to talk about Sandy Hook or 9/11 or the Boston Marathon or any of this stuff. It's going to be moved and shuttled over into the Holocaust territory. Okay? Talking about 9/11 is going to be like talking about the Holocaust. And you're going to be fucked. This is where this is headed. These are generally repugnant points of view to a large swath of people. But he's correct in saying that saying they weren't views that WordPress had prohibited. So we're into the fine print now. The fine print of TOCs and all this other bullshit. The update to WordPress's policy follows a damning report from the New York Times this week that explained how the world's largest blogging service has allowed Sandy Hook conspiracy theorists to remain online. So the New York Times has become an attack dog. It has been for a while. You have the New York Times, the Washington Post, some of the Boston, the Boston Globe, and then you have the Chicago papers, the LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle. These are the major mouthpieces now that are providing the so-called valid cover for what the narrative should or shouldn't be as it regards to questioning these events, because apparently they're the only ones that can be allowed to question these events. And by the way, they won't. WordPress policies were designed to be more resistant to the strategic use of copyright claims as a means of getting content removed. Longtime web veterans know they were written this way because they were created at a time when large corporations would wield copyright law, like the DMCA, as a weapon to use platforms to take down content about their company that they deemed unfavorable. But in recent years, the permissiveness of these policies has also created loopholes for those who spread disinformation, incite hatred and violence, and post abusive and offensive content to the web. People getting upset. They getting their feelings hurt. With little other recourse available to them, Sandy Hook parents have used copyright law to get images of their children removed from the web. Memory hole. Flush it down the memory hole. As the New York Times explained, the Sandy Hook victim's father, Leonard Posner, filed copyright claims with a number of platforms, including WordPress, on images of his son, Noah, a 6-year-old victim of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Facebook, Amazon, and Google complied with those requests, but WordPress responded with form letters explaining why the content could stay online. Well, somebody put a boot to WordPress's neck. The responses, which Mr. Posner described to the paper as automated, very generic and very odd, said the conspiracy blog posts represented fair use of the material. It defined fair use as anything that included criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Unbelievably, you can see where TechCrunch is kind of leaning here. The letters also warned Mr. Posner could collect damages from him for knowingly and materially misrepresenting copyrights. Yes, WordPress told the father of a murdered 6-year-old that it could seek damages from him if he didn't stop asking to remove the stomach-churning, offensive content from those who believe the Sandy Hook shooting never happened and that parents mourning the loss of their children were actors. Okay. Lenny Posner, and not even sure that's even like his real name. I believe his name is, what is it, Varden, or what's his name? Lenny Posner went after Wolfgang Halbig. Wolfgang Halbig was probably on the tip of the spear. He was walking point on the Sandy Hook stuff. And he sued. He sued Wolfgang Halbig. And Wolfgang Halbig went to court and was ready to present his case, which meant that Lenny Posner was theoretically supposed to show up in court and then provide information and evidence contrary to what Wolfgang Halbig was presenting. Lenny Posner did not show up in court. Didn't show up in court. Why? Because he would have had to provide pretty explicit pieces of information to counter what Wolfgang Halbig was bringing to the table. Do you think he wanted that? No. Not at all. He didn't want that. The whole thing would have been exposed. Case was dismissed. You don't show up in court. You're the person that's bringing the suit. You don't show up in court. Case dismissed. Wolfgang Halbig had his day in court and he won. So we are in a Stalinist era of media. It is the eradication of history, both fairly current and modern, to history that reaches back 100, 150 years. And I'm just wondering how far this purge will go. I was watching a movie last night. It's with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. And it's called Fortune Cookie. And the premise of the movie is that Jack Lemmon is a camera person at a football game. This is 1966. The movie's in black and white, which I thought was interesting. I think somebody needed to tell Billy Wilder that color film was available. And Jack Lemmon's he's a cameraman, and he's on the sideline of a Chicago Bears Minnesota Vikings game. And a Chicago Bear player runs into him on the sideline and knocks him out. So Jack Lemmon winds up going to the hospital, and Walter Matthau plays his shyster brother-in-law lawyer who convinces Jack Lemmon that his injuries are worse than they really are, so that they can make a lot of money, collect on this accident. that occurred. And what happens as a result is the football player, who's African American, feels so bad that he hurt him. He has such a guilty conscience that he winds up becoming, for all intents and purposes, almost like a slave in some ways. Now, of course, the tables turn, and the end, and Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, their characters are exposed, and we see what's happening. But I look at that movie and I wonder, under today's umbrage of invisible censorship and guidelines, how does a movie like that stick around? I mean, one could make a case, even though at the end of the movie the tables turn and these two guys are exposed for what they are as frauds. One could make a case that there's a great deal of exploitation in that movie, which could make some people uncomfortable, right? And there's plenty of examples. There's plenty of examples of films like this. And trust me, the day is going to come where there are going to be certain movies that are going to be put on a list and they will not be shown. And I'm not talking about D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. No. I'm talking about movies like Dirty Harry. Like, there are going to be films that you will not be able to see. This is where this is headed. It's starting with blogs. It's starting with Alex Jones. And it's going to trickle down. And you're going to see content. Books are already being removed and have been for a while. If Amazon doesn't like your book, good luck. They won't sell it. But I'm telling you, the cultural purge is on. We are living in a Stalinist version of the United States of America. And I don't speak too strongly to this point. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because these are really important, fundamental, and critical ideas, rights, and they're not just going to be suppressed; they're going to be completely eradicated. I was watching a YouTube vlogger, Unicorn. Is that his name? Unicorn? Oh no, Unirock. He's mildly interesting. He's been on the no Q-tip. Like he just thinks that Q is a bunch of 8chan pranksters and really screwing people over. But he went after Jordan Sather a little bit, Liz Crokin, who apparently is a big QAnon person, and he had some pretty good points. Apparently, Jordan Sather went on to Comedy Central. What is he thinking? What is Jordan Sather thinking? Boy. You're going to go on Comedy Central and they're going to make fun of you. They're going to make fun of you. They're going to persecute you. They're going to persecute you. They're going to persecute everybody that's associated with QAnon. And this game is on now, okay? This is on. Bill Maher went after QAnon on his show. And when you get to the level of being sort of put in the crosshairs by Bill Maher, you're on the list. You're on the list. And to that point, I've had my issues with the Q stuff only because, to me, it felt very pacifying and didn't always, in my estimation, address issues that I think are really pertinent to untangling this net that we're in. Like this whole idea, in like supporting regime change in Iran and all that stuff. It's like, I'm not really down with that. I'm just not down with it. And rarely do they ever tackle like the big, 4,000-pound gorilla in the room, which in my estimation is Zionism and the connection between the United States and Israel and all the back doors and the spying and the tech and all the stuff that goes along with it, right? There's no mention of any of this stuff. So I have an issue when certain pieces of the truth are omitted. And it doesn't matter whether it's QAnon or Alex Jones or, Chicken Little. You got to, if you're going to go for it, put it all out there. So these parts have been, I believe, carefully omitted. And some of the Q people will tell me, well, that's not really true. Yeah, there may be a few drops every now and then, but it's not consistent with what in my research, and I've been doing this now for quite a long time. I started to uncover a lot of this stuff in my late 20s, around 28, 29. So do the math. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been able to piece a few things together here. But my heart was kind of going out to them because now they're going to be set up for ridicule. And in that way, they're kind of like the modern Christians. And in fact, there is that kind of Christian overlay with Q. So there's persecution involved. Persecution, right? And to be honest with you, I know a lot of people on Facebook that love Q. And I like these people. They're good people. They're good people, and they want to eradicate a lot of the bullshit that is being surfaced to some degree with the drops. And so I support them. And I support a lot of the things that are being talked about. I'm not sure I support the mechanism. I'm not sure I fully support the entire program. Because ultimately, I think it's a psyop. But what we're looking at is we're looking at this program and literally millions of people, and they're going to be ridiculed. And it's the same kind of faith-based thinking that Christians are involved in, which gets ridiculed. So, for instance, let's say somebody, let's use Jordan Sather, since he's leading the church. He's out there, and let's say they ask him, well, give us one clear-cut example of where this has actually come true. Him trying to sort out like something on the president's desk, which, was at the number, what is Q in the alphabet? 18? Is that what it is? I think it might be 18. Q is the 17th letter, right? And that, it's the 17th day, and there's the calendar, and it's open to, what's today? Today's the 17th. Today's Q day. And that would be confirmation of something that Q would have talked about. And because it was, on the president's desk, the calendar was open. Do you know what these people would say? You're fucking nuts. You're nuts. And they're going to hold fast and steady to their kind of didactic, science-based programming of this world. And this is where I feel like things can get very difficult. And it's a widening of the gap as well. And I think having a critical mind is really important. But life is not all based on a critical mind. Being able to get outside the box, do associative and relative thinking, looking for clues and patterns. I mean, these are all really important qualities that people like the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA, and the Mossad invest heavily in. Because there are people that have these skills and they want them to work for them. Because they know that there are overarching patterns and cycles that aren't as easily decipherable to the common man or woman. And they want these people working for them because they want them to be able to like read the tea leaves, both literally and figuratively. So these are actual skill sets that are in high demand. And they're the same skill sets that allow us to have a nonlinear relationship with reality. And to think that everything is based on three-dimensional reality, three-dimensional thought is hogwash. Because we know it's not. When you enter into the realm of the quantum, everything changes. The rules change. And so what we have here is we have sort of this formation of a new crisis of heretics. Something is getting played out here at a collective level with QAnon. Remember, we're Neptune and Pisces. And Neptune is in that second decan. So it's in that Cancerian decan, which is dealing with the people. Cancer is the people. Cancer is the emotional core of the Vox Populi. So this is what's happening. Neptune is like, you know, I could talk for the next 2 hours about Neptune, especially in Pisces. You know, out of this collective soup, this, you know, QAnon, the virtual savior emerges. And it is delivered, the truth is delivered to people in digital parables. This is so Neptunian. And I am not, again, I'm not slamming the people for being, I'm not going to sit here and say you're a fucking idiot for believing in QAnon. I'm not going to say that, although I just did say it, but I don't mean it. Because I think there are people who are desperately trying to wake up and they have found something. And not only have they found something, but they have found something that is both illuminating, but also to some degree manageable. And there's something about awakening in numbers that is probably safer than kind of awakening by yourself. Case in point, really, really good friend, lives in Houston. And she was telling me that, you know, months ago, that there are groups of people who are anons, right? They're people that are into QAnon, and they meet together. And they have like potlucks and they talk about stuff. I mean, this is what I think is interesting about QAnon because it is a collective experience. It is a group experience. And so when this happens, people don't feel like they're alone. They don't feel like they're isolated and crazy. This is why what's happening to me is interesting, at least at that level. I'm always the guy that goes in the other direction. I've been that way all my life, for better or worse. I go in the other direction. So when I see all this happening, I'm like, okay, stroking my beard. What's happening here? Oh, yeah. I think I should probably go the other way. Because what's going to happen, and I'm not doing this out of any sort of self-preservation. It's just, you know, it's just who I am. What's going to happen is that these people are going to be persecuted. We're already seeing some of that take place. They're going to let the QAnon stuff happen for a while. I believe it's a limited hang. I believe there are people that have been inserted into the QAnon theater. I believe Jordan Sather might be one of those people. Certainly Liz Crokin appears to be one of those people. I don't know about the Praying Medic or, all these other people. Michael Trim. If I wanted to, I could have gotten into Q big time and my views would have gone up. Right? They would have exploded. I'd have 10,000 people viewing my stuff. And trust me, I'm a pretty good decoder. And if I wanted to go, buck naked into Q land, I could have been a very good Q decoder. But I didn't want to. Because there's plenty of people out there doing it. There's plenty of franchises already invested in it. But I'm telling you, there's going to come a time, and it's already starting to happen, where the persecution, which is a very Piscean kind of iteration of what they're going to experience, is going to start to happen. They've already attached this guy in Southern California who supposedly started the fires in Southern California. They've already attached the Q sort of background and all the Q stuff and sort of this the Q identity. They've attached it to him. Not that he's Q, but they've made this connection that the guy's a truther. He's into Q, and guess what? He started a bunch of fires. You see, this is what's going to happen now. We're at a point where I believe, to some degree, they're playing a game of Russian roulette with the internet, and have been for a while. And Zbigniew Brzezinski used to talk about this when he was alive. And he basically said that the internet was like, one of the worst things that could have been developed. And basically that the only way you're going to win on the internet is by taking shit down. So was the internet created to be a limited hang? Question mark. Because it became, I'm already talking about in past tense, it became a kind of raucous sort of town hall meeting in Deadwood, circa, 1853 or whatever. That's what it became. And a lot of the views were pumped up by people who were and have been trying to make connections, connect dots, share information, and pull the veil back. You go into YouTube, sure, there's, for every Logan Paul, you might have to come up with, 5 versions of Alex Jones because of Logan Paul's immense popularity. But those numbers combined are pretty substantial. Fairly substantial. So now we're looking at this shuttering process. The doors are closing. The exits are closing. And you know what happens when all the exits are closed. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. So we're in that time. It's all happening prior to the midterms. And the internet, Julian Assange, wherever he is, WikiLeaks, another limited hang, because of course we don't get anything from WikiLeaks anymore now, do we, really? Have we had any really sensational drops for a while? No. And there are people that still work for WikiLeaks in London. They use WikiLeaks to disseminate one of the biggest information drops ever. That stuff from the DNC, it's huge. It's a game changer. It was a game changer. Although I think Trump probably would have won without that stuff. But if you were on the fence, you were moved. That material moved the needle. Guarantee you. So we have the midterms coming up, and what's going to happen? Well, I'll tell you right now, they're going to want to control the freaking internet. And again, I'm not here to get into, well, the right is better than the left. I do think that ultimately the right does stand for, to some degree, personal responsibility. And maybe little else, to be honest with you. I guess I would put myself in the category of being kind of a constitutionalist libertarian with a little bit of, anarchism thrown in. I understand the left-right paradigm. But where the left has de-evolved into, I think, is quite dangerous. Because they're I believe, on the borderline of insanity, to be honest with you. I got into it with a guy on Facebook the other day. And he was frothing at the mouth with Alex Jones. Hateful this and that, and bigot. And I just calmly said, look, I've been following Alex Jones for years. Watch a lot of Alex Jones. I've never seen him put another race down. Never. Never. He's never had any suits against him from employees who believed he was acting racist towards them. I know a gal who that's not racist, but probably fall in the line of being a bigot. I know a gal who works for him who's gay. She's a producer at InfoWars. She loves working there. She loves working there. If Alex Jones was a bigot, he'd say, look, you're a lesbo dyke. Get out of here. But he didn't. There's not one documented case of racism with Alex Jones. And you would think in the age of the internet that there would be some tape somewhere where he'd bust out the N-word or whatever. He's never done. There's never been anything. Just like this idea that Trump is a racist. I don't believe Trump is a racist. If you can make Trump a buck, he'll employ you. The only color he's ever cared about probably is green. And yet, this guy's coming at me. Oh, he's a racist. No. There's no record of him demeaning people from other races. It's not there. Don't try to make something up. It's not there. Well, what about being a bigot? Well, part of the definition of being a bigot is it's partially about racism, but it's also about religion. Alex Jones does not dog religions unless it's Muslim extremism, radical Islam. Well, he's all over that. He's on to the Chinese, but he's on to them because of the government, not because of the people, again. And he loves, oh my God, he loves Israel. Loves the Christians. Maybe I've seen him dog a few Satanists. Is that bigotry? If you're not down with Satanism, is that bigotry? It might be, by the way. As we move into these uncertain times around language, image, and intent, and definition, it might be. It might be. It just might be. Go apologize to that Satanist. You told that Satanist that he was a devil-worshipping asshole. Go apologize to him. For which part? The devil-worshipping or the asshole part? It's coming. I'm telling you. It's coming. Jones never had any of this. And so I said, well, you can't I'm telling you these things, and you can't provide any example. And then he comes back with, well, it's about what's forward future. And you wait to see what happens, pal. Well, first of all, I'm not your pal, although I understand. In that moment, pal is really demeaning, right? It's kind of demeaning. It's kind of like, an open hand shove against my shoulder. Boom, pal. Boom. Whatever. Jasper's here. Hi, Jasper. And I'm thinking about, well, what's this guy talking about? Well, he's talking about thought crime and pre-crime. Well, we have to take him out because somebody somewhere is going to get a message and they're going to do damage to another person because of this. So now this guy is becoming, you see how this works now? He's becoming little brother. He is little brother. And the world is filled with little brothers and little sisters who are so convinced of their own piety and morality that it borders on bullying. We got to take them off the air before something happens. Meanwhile, you can get just about any kind of video game on the planet which has gratuitous and excessive violence and questionable themes. I mean, all that stuff. Nobody ever blinks an eye over that stuff. Oh yeah, just fill your kid full of Mountain Dew, which I think has like 2 parts of radiator fluid in or something. But yeah, get them all hyped up on that and stick them in front of a TV and, let them kill thousands of people every day. Nobody ever talks about that. That has no influence on your brain. No, nothing. No, not at all. But Alex Jones, boy, you don't want those ideas. Somebody's bound to go get crazy. You have a crazy moment. You just wait, pal. So that's where we are. He's like this advocate of pre-crime and thought crime. And that's where this is all headed. Let's cut off the threat before the threat ever manifests itself. We have a right. We have a responsibility to stop these people in their tracks. It's what Antifa uses as their moral outrage and fuel for violence. Now, on the other side, are there people who are agents provocateurs who do incite violence? Yes, they do. They do. And those people should be denounced equally by the left or the right or whatever. Should be just denounce them. But Alex Jones is not. He is not advocating violence. Well, there's violence in his ideas. Really? Maybe you don't like the ideas because they threaten you. Maybe you don't like the ideas because they threaten how you think. And if we begin to unravel how you think, well, you just might fucking unravel altogether. And then what's left of you? Who are you? I've talked about this before. If somebody came along and put a metaphoric Band-Aid on my mouth and I couldn't utter another word about any of this stuff, I could change a track and I could get into spirituality and your high self, and we could have a whole different dialogue. I'm not bound or limited by what I talk about. If I wanted to, I could go start up an internet blog or podcast about sports if I wanted to. Are these some of these ideas important to me? Yes, absolutely. And some of them are actually worth fighting for and dying for, believe it or not. See, people don't understand this. This is what people don't really are so out of touch with. That some of these things that we theoretically have as a right, an inalienable right, sometimes these things have to be fought for to the point where you are willing to sacrifice yourself for the ideal or the actual right. And I'm not saying go out and get a gun and go shoot something up because you believe in free speech or, the First, Second, or Fifth Amendments, or whatever. Right? I'm not there. It's not what I'm talking about. But if a clash of ideas and the broad net of censorship begins to be cast upon us, then you have to fight for it. You have to. You have to. Because if you don't, at the end of the day, if it all gets taken away, then you are complicit. You allowed it to happen in your own way. You allowed it to happen. And now you get to live in that world. Good luck. But more importantly, you got to live with yourself. A few months back, I was playing some stuff from Apocalypse Now. It's a little controversial. I was talking about, the clips I was playing was Colonel Kurtz, and he was talking about the horror. The horror. The sheer horror. Utterly brilliant. That was a pretty good Brando. And I played it for a reason. And the reason was because Brando in that moment, and Marlon Brando was a trip. Quincy Jones said he would fuck anything. I believe it. I totally believe it. Quincy Jones said he would fuck a lamppost. I believe that. But what he was trying to get across in that moment was you have to be willing to make a sacrifice for moral outrage. This is what he talked about as Kurtz. And he used the example of the kids who got inoculated by the U.S. And they came back the next day or 2 days after that, or whatever, like a week after that. And all the kids had gotten their arms cut off above where they got inoculated. They all had one arm, right? And what he was talking about in that moment was, well, this is the sacrifice that they had to make. It's like, we're not going to allow your poison. We're not going to be vaccinated or indoctrinated by your contagion. Now, am I advocating you go cut kids' arms off after they have a vaccine? Absolutely not. I wouldn't do that. However, there is something about what he was talking about that people have no understanding about what it's like or what it takes to be able to anchor a freedom or a right. We've taken that for granted, and we're about to be tested on that in kind of a big way. And it's also going to be very interesting to watch people just lose their shit, like this guy on Facebook. He was unhinged. That's why I brought him up. That's why I was saying that the left is kind of bonkers. They're unhinged. They have no morals. They have no center. They have no center. None. They think they do, but the center's all over the place. There's no center at all. Anyway, speaking of moral outrage, well, let's talk about New Mexico, shall we? Let's return the page here. Let's talk about New Mexico. And of course, most of you know about the compound in New Mexico that was raided. And it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. They were squatting. And there was a kid that had gone missing. I guess he had been abducted from his home in Georgia. I think the guy might have been his dad. You know. And the kid that went missing is the kid that I think wound up dead. So the story is there's this compound in New Mexico. They're Muslims, certainly radical looking. And the subtext is that they're out there in the desert and they're training these kids to be terrorists. There's your moral outrage. This guy was like his own version of Colonel Kurtz out there in the New Mexico desert, living under primitive conditions, unsanitary conditions. Looked like a living hellhole, to be honest with you. With this plan that they were going to turn these kids into super soldiers, I guess. And they were going to put them through all these rites and initiations in order to do that. Well, something happened along the way. One of the kids died. And finally, after months of the people who actually owned the land trying to get these people off with absolutely no help from the local authorities, they finally went out and they cruised around, looked around, and they saw stuff that they didn't like. So they arrested all these people and they took the kids from them. Because the issues here were child endangerment. Again, Leo, children, emotional currency, here we go. South Node, Aquarius, ideological, radical, right? So they go and they have their day in court. And Susan Backus, is that her name? Susan Backus, the judge. Let me just find this out. Hold on. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Let's just see. Hold on. Maybe it's Baxter. Hold on. It's Backus. Yes, it is Backus. Sarah Backus. Well, Bacchus is Bacchanalian. It's the god of wine and celebration. It's the god of orgiastic celebration. She is under a lot of heat. A lot of heat. She let these people go. And the amount of bail was not that big. Where they got the money from, only the FBI knows. Judge Sarah Backus, let me read this to you. This is from the Washington Post. In her ruling that 5 suspects arrested at a New Mexico compound with 11 children could be released to house arrest on $20,000 bonds. That's $20,000 apiece. $100,000. Where'd they get $100,000? If you saw where they were living, these people didn't have $100,000. So this is what she wrote. But she wrote on Monday, the canons of judicial ethics require that judges not concern themselves with public opinion. The defendants are innocent until they are proved to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So I wonder how this judge, Susan Backus, would have ruled if maybe they weren't involved with the FBI, or maybe they might have been something a bit different. Let's say they were Christians. Do you think the bonds would be $20,000? I bet you they don't get out of jail. The threats started coming the next day, hundreds of hostile calls and emails flooding into the county townhouse in Taos, where she presides. After the news of a ruling spread through far-right social media circles, The court was inundated with calls and emails expressing opposition to the judge's ruling and calling the judge various derogatory words. Barry Massey, a spokesman for the New Mexico Administrative Office of the Courts, told the Post. One caller threatened to cut Backus's throat. Massey said one of a handful of death threats. The severity of the messages prompted officers to lock down the court on Tuesday until its closing to prevent anyone from entering, Massey said. Some of the administrative officers were also evacuated. The court had never experienced anything like the vitriol and the volume of response, according to Massey, who said it had set up a messaging system on its phone line to deal with the overwhelming response. This is a new one for them, he said. Talked to longtime employees, had some high-profile cases, but nothing that has unleashed this kind of venomous response. People are pissed off, man. People are angry. The court's chief judge, Jeff McElroy, and Massey both issued statements posted prominently on the court's website pointing to provisions in the state constitution or criminal procedure laws. The New Mexico Constitution has guarantees in statehood that people charged with a crime have a right to be released pre-trial, except in limited instances, Massey's statement said. The Constitution, state constitution, provides that criminal defendants may be detained in jail pre-trial only if prosecutors show by clear and convincing evidence that they are so dangerous that no release conditions will reasonably protect public safety. The strong opposition, or the strong response is the latest indication of the attention and intensity the New Mexico case has attracted since law enforcement officers raided the compound in a remote northern corner of the state on August 3rd. They found 5 adults, 11 children, multiple guns, and many rounds of ammunition at what they described as a squalid desert outpost composed of a trailer sunk into the dirt, a utility truck appropriated as a makeshift bed, and an approximately 100-foot-long tunnel dug into the earth. They also found the body of a young child whom they identified Thursday as Abdul Ghani Wahaj, the son of one of the suspects, Siraj Ibn Wahaj. Prosecutors charged the 5 adults, Lucas Allen Morton, 40, Wahaj, who has been accused of abducting his son in Georgia, Hujra J. Wahaj, 37, sister of Siraj Wahaj, Subhana A. Wahaj, 35, another sister, and Janie N. Laville, 35, with 11 counts of felony child abuse. The case drew intense media coverage after court documents filed in the arrest contained an allegation that children had been brought to the compound to receive weapons training. One of the children's foster parents told investigators the child had been trained to use an assault rifle in preparation for future shootings. Prosecutors noted in court documents, and the local sheriff who made the arrest said the group was considered extremist of the Muslim belief. Now, look, kids can learn how to shoot guns. I live in Flyover. There are kids here that know how to shoot guns. And I don't think it's a bad thing for a kid to learn how to shoot a gun. I'd rather them learn how to shoot a gun than to demonize it. If you live in Israel or you live in Switzerland, guess what? You learn how to shoot a gun. It's the name of the game. But in her bail ruling, Backus said prosecutors did not show clear and convincing evidence the suspects were a danger to the community. She said the guns found were not stolen or illegal. Defendants did not have a history of criminal charges or failures to appear in court, and the evidence presented being dangerous terrorists that plot against the country institutions was thin. Further, she seemed to imply she believed the defendants were being treated differently because they were Muslim. The court was asked by the state to make a finding of dangerousness and a finding that no conditions of release could ensure the safety of the community, Backus wrote. The state apparently expected the court to take the individual's faith into account in making such a determination. The court is not aware of any law that allows the court to take a person's faith into consideration in making a dangerous determination. This should set a precedent, by the way, in the state of New Mexico. So if you have any kind of faith and you are railroaded into court because of it, there's a precedent here. The threats against Backus appear to have been stoked by anger that traveled quickly across right-wing social media accounts. By the way, the internet is filled with torch-bearing mobs right now. Why do you think these websites get shut down? It's torch-bearing virtual mobs. And they've got their virtual torches, and they go to a website, and they've got the torches out, and they're demanding that you do something. Shut it down, or we're going to burn this place down. We're going to burn you down. We're going to contact all of your sponsors. And we're going to make sure nobody does business with you because you're racist, fascist, hateful, a bigot. Well, it's clear that the right's got their torches out too. They're taking them. They're taking them to Judge Backus. Let's see. Let's read this. The threats against Backus appear to have been stoked by anger that traveled quickly across right-wing social media accounts, many of which noted the group's extremist Muslim affiliation or referred to the compound as a jihad camp. Accounts like the Red Elephants, 384,000 followers, Happy Hayride, 93,000 followers, and Powdered Wig Society, 293,000, posted a telephone number or email address at the court for the judge. Other Twitter accounts posted the judge court's address or Backus's photo, noting that she is a Democrat. Here's a quote. Paul Manafort gets 23 hours of solitary confinement every day, wrote one popular account named after the QAnon conspiracy theory on Twitter. There we go. 5 Muslim adults living on a makeshift compound with 11 malnourished children, training them for school shootings, get bond for $20,000. This is not justice. Remember the name, Judge Sarah Backus. Because of the warrant out for Wahaj's arrest in Georgia stemming from an accusation he had abducted his 3-year-old son, Abdul Ghani, he will remain in detention, awaiting a hearing on his potential extradition. His lawyer, Thomas Clark, told the Post, Laville, who is from Haiti, is reportedly in the custody of federal immigration officials. It is not clear if the other defendants have been released from jail yet. They will be subject to electronic monitoring and other strict conditions when they are, per Backus's ruling. The defendants' bonds are also only due if they do not comply with the terms of their release. On Thursday, New Mexico's Office of the Medical Examiner also confirmed that the remains of a child found on the property were Abdul Ghani. That poor kid. According to the Associated Press, the body had decomposed so badly that investigators were not able to determine how he died. Well, guess what? They just leveled the entire compound overnight. They ended with bulldozers. They bulldozed everything. Everything. They bulldozed the tunnels. They bulldozed everything. Backus said there was evidence the child had died while in the suspect's custody, but said the court had only seen evidence they prayed over him and touched him on the forehead before he died. Oh. They prayed on him and touched him on the forehead. The Taos County District Attorney plans to appeal Backus's ruling. District Attorney Donald Gallego said the judge had all the evidence necessary to continue to detain. Look, if something happens with these people while they're out, this judge, when I say something happens, they get disappeared, they take off, maybe they're, eliminated, extracted, whatever. This judge is going to have some splaining to do. Here's what I think. I think the judge got a phone call. And whoever called her was way above her pay grade and said, you got to let them go. You got to give them bail. $20,000. Where did they get the $20,000? How would you have this poor kid, man? He was like, he's in Georgia. I don't know what his life like was in Georgia, but it couldn't have been worse than where he was headed. He gets taken out. He's going cross countries with his dad. Probably, most little kids love their dad. His dad's about to transport him into the bowels of hell, apparently. Poor kid. He winds up dying out there. I mean, I got a little outrage on this one. I just do. I don't know what they did to this kid, but it stinks to high heaven. It absolutely, and I saw them in court. They're fucking grinning. I don't care what religion they are. I don't care what color they are. But they're like these grinning assholes. And a kid died. A little kid. Who knows? Maybe he's in a much better place than this place is. And maybe they did him a favor. It reminds me of that movie, The Rapture, in a lot of ways. This feels like an FBI, CIA, limited hang deal. That's what it feels like. I just like to know where they got the money. I think that's really the big question here. Where'd they get the money? $20,000 a piece. $100,000. You'd think that if they could have gotten $100,000, they'd be living in a nicer place. Instead of some hellhole in northern New Mexico. I'm sure they got the money from their handlers. That's what I think. Easy. And then they got the call. Let you 20K a piece. Okay. Let them go. People are pissed. I'm telling you. Something's going to pop here. There's going to be a breaking point. Somebody's going to snap. And whoever snaps first loses. That's what happens. Whoever snaps first loses. And there's a lot of stick poking going on. Right? People are getting, it's like a dog. The dogs are getting poked on the left and the right. There's a lot of poking going on. There's a lot of pissed off dogs running around out there. Speaking of pissed off, Trump has plenty of anger, no doubt, as every single newspaper in the country has decided to turn against him. In a concentrated front, every single newspaper of note in this country, editorially, has all turned their barrels and their scopes on one Donald John Trump. The heat is on, man. The heat is on. And we're just getting started. We got the midterms coming, and it's going to be very, very intense. Very intense. Wow. I think I'll do a show about the midterms coming up. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it, but it'll be sometime before the end of September. And maybe I'll look at candidates and trends and what's been happening. But clearly, it seems as though there is a distinct movement to begin to silence opposition before we have these elections in November. Let me check in with the chat room here, see what we got. See what's happening. What's happening, chatters? What's happening, chatters? Let me see here. Lynn, according to Fox, 20,000 was a promise to. Promise to what? Show up, appear? It's 20,000 a piece or 20,000 in general. Even if it's 20,000 in general, they've got to come up with 4,000 a piece. And again, based on what I saw, $20,000 would have been a huge upgrade in their world. Huge. 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 How about Trump and Omarosa? What a shit show that is, huh? Wow. I did a blog post on it. I got into it. My theory about Donald Trump. Astrologically, past life. Donald Trump was a plantation owner. And he's having to deal with that in this lifetime. That's my past life theory on Donald Trump. Even this thing with Kanye, which is so weird. And Kanye talking about how You basically have to free yourself. Like slavery is a choice. That's what Kanye said. Slavery is a choice. He said, I won't be bullied into monolithic thought. That's another quote from Kanye. And this love for Trump. It feels like Trump cut Kanye loose at one point in a prior life. Doesn't it feel that way? It's like Kanye got off the res. Trump helped him off the res. And Kanye's here to pay him back. Here to thank him. And then the Omarosa thing, it's like, wow, that's cray. That's totally crazy. There's no way she should have been in that White House. No way. She's insane. She's totally insane. Even his most ardent supporters, Trump's most ardent supporters, saying, what is he thinking? That's a past life thing. He had to go through with it. They had a child together in a past life. That's my sense, based on the astrology. The old wacky astrological stuff. Somehow my videos are getting put over up on BitChute. Maybe I started that BitChute. I think I might have. I think I did. Anyway, that's another place you can go see or hear this. It's over on BitChute. Okay, I think we're done. 90 minutes. 90 minutes. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. It's good to get back on the bad motor scooter and ride. I will be back on Sunday night, of course, with the live stream, the astrological live stream, which I love doing. It's a great group of people. You want to learn about astrology, hang out in the chat. It's a lot of fun. It's me, the cats, the hummingbirds, and 60 or so of my closest internet astrological compañeros. So that's over on my YouTube channel. That'll happen on Sunday night. And Monday, I'm going to be playing with Dialogue and doing astrological weather forecasts, about 10 to 15 minutes a day. And then the following Monday, it is the return of 15 Minutes of Flame, which will be a live stream in conjunction with the Spreaker stuff. Dude, a Spreaker cut Alex Jones loose, too. How about that? All right. Thank you for listening and for being a part of this experience. Wishing you all a very great weekend. And, the now is where it's at. The now is the place to be. Get into now. So I'll do our best to stay there. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see what's possible. You're Robert.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.